Hi, View fam. This is Richa from CoachViva.com.
Yeah, and I'm Lucy. Happy to see you guys all again on a Friday afternoon.
Yes. We're working from home, as many of you are now.
So, yeah, I don't know if you guys know this, but we're in Seattle.
Yeah.
The epicenter of the USA coronavirus saga.
Yes. It's quiet. Cool. So today's topic is on intermittent fasting and when is it not for you. So we'll talk about both parts. When is it for you and when is it not for you? Let's see. The first thing that I was thinking we could start with was, will intermittent fasting help you lose weight?
And I think that is like anything, it depends on you situation, but I will say for 80%, 80% of the people who try it, they have seen success with it. And that's pretty much because when you do intermittent fasting, you basically have to cut out a meal. If you're it depends on what protocol you're following. The most common one is the 16-8 protocol, where you eat for 8 hours. You only eat within an 8-hour window, like from 12 to 8 every day, for instance. And you fast for 16 hours, so you don't eat. And what that really translates into is either you skip your breakfast, so you don't start eating until noon for lunch, or some people will skip their dinners instead. So they only eat breakfast and then they basically stop eating after 2 to 4 p.m. or something like that. And if you cut out an entire food group, most diets consist of cutting out food groups. This is basically cutting out a whole meal, right? And so when you do that, you're obviously cutting a lot of calories out of your day as well. And that is why if you can follow intermittent fasting protocol, then it's very likely to work.
Yeah, and this is actually interesting. So I was reading about intermittent fasting, about this video that I'm creating, and they did a study and they found that, by they as in like some scientists, I don't know exactly which scientists, I don't remember their names, but they fed people the same meal for breakfast and dinner, and then they measured their insulin response. And even though it was exactly the same meal, in the morning time, there was lesser insulin produced to clear up the meal versus at dinner time, which is interesting because most people, when they try to do intermittent fasting, like the 16-8 protocol, they skip breakfast. But in fact, scientifically, it's better to have the breakfast and reduce your time for the dinner.
And they ate the same meals?
The same meal for breakfast and for dinner. The body is just like more sensitive to insulin. Like it doesn't need as much insulin.
Do you remember reading if the spike was bigger or it was total insulin levels was higher?
The spike was bigger.
Interesting, because I would expect the total insulin levels to be higher because there may be leftover insulin from your afternoon snack or something like that. It's surprising that the spike was also bigger. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to look into that. So if you cut any meals, you're probably going to eat less calories than before. But I also found that, I don't know, I've experienced both, to be quite honest. I found that I slept better when depends on when I ate, I think. But if I don't eat right before I sleep, I can just sleep better. But if I don't eat a morning meal, then I tend to be more productive in the morning. So I think I don't know. Yeah, it's just different. But I only have anecdotal evidence on my side.
Right. Yeah, I think I have also only heard anecdotal evidence for that thing. I about like, you sleep better if there's longer gap between you eating and then going to sleep as well, right? I think it might have been also studies on this.
I don't know how big that gap needs to be, though. I don't think it needs to be like 6 hours before you go to sleep. You finish your last meal. No, I think it's more like within 1 to 2 hours, you should probably finish your last meal.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's that, and then this particular study as well, also kind of points out that it may be a good idea to experiment with like not actually skipping breakfast, but actually having your dinner earlier, like at 6 or something. So that's pretty interesting.
And if you are a late night snacker, it might help to make it a totally cut it off at the afternoon or evening point instead of cutting it off in your morning meals.
Yeah, totally. And especially like I think optimizing your eating windows around when you tend to graze. So if you're someone who, let's say, grazes between 3 to 6 or something, right? Like crazy. It maybe a 12 to 8 window is not really that helpful. if you're already skipping breakfast and you just like eat constantly between that 8-hour window, maybe it's better to actually have 2 disjointed windows if you and optimizing it around what your habits tend to be, basically. Yeah, and I think we've also had clients, before we move on from that, the grazing eating pattern to the non-grazing eating pattern. Did you have something else to say about the grazing eating pattern before I move on?
I wasn't going to say anything about the grazing eating pattern other than this method is very useful for people who are grazers.
Yes.
I am a grazer, which is why I do intermittent fasting intermittently. Yeah. So I would say that does help with people who are grazers, and especially if mainly what you're grazing on is carby foods, because that we brought up insulin earlier. I don't think we actually talked about what intermittent fasting has to do with insulin.
Right.
But when you fast, and typically fasting means at least a 12-hour period, which is normally people do fast for 12 hours. It's because it's, between dinner and breakfast is usually 12 hours for most people.
Right.
But so you need when you fast, basically your body isn't processing food anymore, and your insulin levels go down, and the blood sugar is no longer in your stream. That's pretty much the general, the very top level of what's happening when your body is in a fasted state. Is basically not much stuff is happening in terms of moving blood sugar around. That's what insulin does. It moves blood sugar around. And when that happens, your body can focus on all sorts of other things like cleanup and the things that cause the longevity claims that you see on a lot of research out there. And it also reduces cravings when there's not a high spike of insulin. When basically insulin has a chance to just chill out for a little bit, it's not giving you that blood sugar drop that it would have if you're just constantly like eating it and spiking it and spiking it and spiking it. It is like once you give it some time to chill, you actually find that your cravings go down a little bit more. That was my best way of giving a brief non-sciencey, like in the detail explanation.
Yeah,
I hope I made some point.
Yeah, and there are nuances to what Lucy just said as well, right? I think it depends on what kind of food you're eating, and that or what foods you're having together, and how much of that spike happens, right? Like if you have pure sugar, that's a big spike, right? But
if you eat nothing but donuts during your eating window, even if you are fasting, you're probably still going to experience blood sugar crashes and cravings outside of your eating window.
Yes.
And that's not good.
Exactly. Yeah.
We'll talk about that in the part where we talk about who intermittent fasting is not for.
Yes. The second type, which we have had a few clients like this, they might be grazers, but they also tend to be someone who eat, like, for example, as a woman, 600 to 1,000 calories in one meal, right? So regardless of whether they're grazing or not, if you have an 8-hour window at that point, you just have 2 of those meals and you've gone over your calories, right? So it's important to also note what your eating patterns should be. If you're mainly like tiny amounts of food throughout the day, then intermittent fasting would very quickly be effective for you. But then if you're someone who just has a gigantic meal in one sitting, intermittent fasting is not really going to help you unless you do something like 1 meal a day, which can be pretty extreme and not helpful if you are if the reason you're eating so much is because of emotional issues. It doesn't really help the root problem at that point.
Yes, and we're talking about people who want to lose weight in this case, not if you're doing intermittent fasting for mental clarity or other kinds of optimizing type of benefits. And to go on with that, I think the root of it is if you are a highly emotional eater, intermittent fasting may not be something that you can stick with. Is what we've seen. So there are kind of two cases I've seen really that happens a lot. So one type of client who does one of the things you talked about, which was eat a lot of food during their window, which was actually me at a certain point too. So intermittent fasting didn't always work for me. And when it didn't work for me was because I would be so hungry. And part of that was psychological. That when the eating window started, I would just eat everything under the sun because I had this starvation mindset where I felt that if I don't eat everything in my eating window, then I will starve and I will not get a chance to eat again.
Yeah.
And therefore I must not waste my eating window space. And so normally when I would just eat, two typical, normal size portions during this time, I would end up eating like 5 gigantic meals. And not only did I end up eating more calories when I was fasting, my digestive system also did not like that. So I had really bad stomach and gas problems too. So none of that was helpful.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a psychological game. So if you're somebody who is already afraid of being hungry and already afraid of starving, and the intermittent fasting might not be the best next step for you to try. It may not be like the first thing that you want to try to do. It might actually worsen the problem.
Exactly. Yeah. Afraid of fasting. Also, if you just generally have disordered eating, I think that's a second type of person.
Yes, if you generally have disordered eating, I would not recommend most diets.
Yeah.
That's not the first problem.
Yeah.
There's something deeper.
Yeah.
Food is not your problem if you have disordered eating.
Yeah. So it doesn't help those people. Of course, if you're pregnant, I think that's the
kind of person. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Follow what your doctor says.
Yeah.
If you're pregnant.
Also, I've read that if you have insomnia, like actually really bad insomnia, that intermittent fasting is also not a good idea.
Yep, that was also me, because I would be hungry in bed.
Yeah.
Or thinking I'm hungry. Like I don't know, because that was the time where I couldn't tell the difference between hunger and cravings either. So I don't know if I was really hungry or not hungry.
Did you wake up?
I was in bed.
Were like, I'm hungry. Did you wake up, or were you just like not able to?
I've never woken up out of hunger. No. So maybe I wasn't really hungry.
Yeah, because that's how
you have. Okay.
Yeah.
So it must be psychological.
Project. I would wake up literally in the middle of the night and be like, I'm hungry.
I see. Yeah.
Or like people I know who run marathons or like are preparing for marathons. I know they wake up in the middle of the night, go to the kitchen and like have a whole meal.
Yes. No, I do know that happens to people. Yeah, who train really hard.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that also related to emotional eating, but it's more like externally triggered eating. If you are the kind of person who, and this is me, by the way, I think this might even be you, where if you see cake or donuts or pizza, in your case, on the table, there is just a compulsion to grab it and eat it. I actually don't know really anyone who doesn't have some of that in them, right? Like if there's good food in front of you, my human evolution psychology says, eat the energy. The energy is good. You never know when you're going to starve.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if you are in an environment where constantly the food is there. So if you're working in an office, this is the most common situation we've encountered, but both personally and through our clients. You are working in an office and people bring food all the time, not healthy food. You know the food I mean.
Yeah. The cheap food.
Yeah.
Usually junk.
Or if you're living with roommates for instance, and there's also junk everywhere all the time, then intermittent fasting may not be a very sustainable strategy, because it's going to be very hard to not go for it when it's right in front of your face. And then in which case you might want to think of a different strategy. So that would be the second scenario that I would say most people don't have much success with it.
Yeah. Do you mean like sustainable long term, or do you mean like during like I can see myself being black and if I'm being black and white, I can be like, this is not my eating window. So even if there is pizza, I'm not going to eat it. But do you mean like when my eating window opens up, I basically fall into I just had 1,000 because I ate a whole pizza category?
It includes the second category, but it is also the person who just has a really hard time. Like I know because I'm this person, I can tell myself I'm not going to eat the donuts until 12 p.m. But
I see.
80% of the time I eat the donut anyway.
Yeah.
And I could still tell myself I'm trying to intermittent fast, but if I look at my results, I'm like, I haven't actually stuck to my eating window the past 5 days.
Yeah.
I don't think this is actually working out for me. So that's what I mean. If there's literally donuts in front of your face, I don't know about you, but I can't just ignore it for 4 hours. Yeah. I'd have to put it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might hide it from you. Yeah. So
which happened to me once. I was working in a group office setting and there was donuts right behind me. Like every time I turn around, donuts. And then I just ate. So I used a different strategy. I did the breaking it apart kind of and use a special plate anyway, whatever. I know I will eat the donut, right? So as I will just try to make it last longer, which isn't intermittent fasting, but it's another strategy. So point is, there are always different strategies.
I was worse actually. There was like an Indian sweet called burfi. I love burfi.
Indian sweets are amazing. Yeah, in general. Yeah, I don't even know what that is, but I'm sure it's amazing.
It was really good. It's like diamond shaped, and it has these silvery things on top of it. So I was like an enabler because every time I'd go there, I'd also get it from my friend Alice, and then both of us are like, okay, we're not getting this anymore. We're not eating this.
Yeah,
and then one of us would cross the office with the burfi, and then we'd be like, hey, here's more burfi. And we're like, why? Don't bring it for me.
Yeah.
So we're like, don't have friends.
You were the food pusher in your friend group.
I wasn't even, I don't know. Is it a pusher if I just put it in front of her and leave?
I guess it's a pusher if they put it away and then you bring it back to them. Which I had coworkers that did that. If I actually try to put it away, they would not be happy that I did that.
Yeah. But in disclaimer, none of us were actually trying to avoid it. We just thought it was a good idea not to have it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were breaking anyone's goals.
This relates back to our last week's episode about self-responsibility, where we both knew what we were getting into. We knew the choices we made. And you know what we're in control of, what we're not in control of, and just being real about that.
So that's a good point. Like setting up your environment. Like it's one thing to say like I'm not going to eat for 16 hours, but then actually being able to stick to it. A lot of it is just like setting up your environment and the people around you to be supportive of it. All right. So non-weight loss benefits of intermittent fasting, and should you care?
Yes. So we kind of touched on that. Well, first of all, if your goal is weight loss and that's what you're doing intermittent fasting for, then maybe no, you shouldn't care, I guess.
It's bonus. Everything else is bonus.
It is bonus. I see it. Okay, so there's like I think of things as stages, really, stages and levels. At basically level 1, where most people start at, is they're overweight. I mean, let's face it, right? 99% of us who look into health and fitness stuff want to lose fat. So they're overweight and they have health problems as a result of being that or associated with that. And their number one priority is to lose weight. But on top of that, they also want all the other health benefits too. Who doesn't, right? I also want mental clarity. I also want to live longer. I also want athletic enhancements or whatever else benefits a diet or an eating protocol promises. But we can only really focus and prioritize one thing at a time. Some very special people can do maybe 2 or 3, but I would say the vast majority of us can only prioritize one thing in our life to change. And you have to decide, is that one thing optimal brain function? Is that one thing I want to change to lose weight? Is that one thing I want to change to increase my performance at the gym? It doesn't have to be lose weight, but it just needs to be one. It is my main point. And so for most people, weight loss is the biggest rock. As in, they will notice more. It depends on how much overweight. If you just want to, lose 5 or 10 pounds, it may not be your biggest rock, right? But if you have 50 pounds to lose, that may actually be your biggest rock, because when you lose weight, you see the progress more clearly than brain function. And it's hard to measure. And it's kind of like in a previous episode, we talked about high leverage goals, high leverage changes. For most people, when they start, if they're very overweight, when they lose weight, that's a high leverage change that also has the side effect of improving all sorts of health markers, including brain function and longevity and athletic performance. And so that is really the question of, should I care or should I not care? What is my biggest rock? What is my highest leverage goal that I want?
And 2 things about what you said. I think number one, the other benefits of intermittent fasting are I don't think as conclusively proven as like weight loss. Maybe like, for example, how do you measure brain clarity, for example? Right?
I think you can give people tests and things like that. Are you talking about in a research study or
in a research study?
anecdotally?
Like, no, research study.
Oh, okay.
Like, like in a research study, like from what I've read, like a lot of it you'll notice if you read any intermittent fasting thing, like beyond weight loss, right? And the things that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Everything else is like may help, blah blah blah. They're not saying does help.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the test they can give. There are tests to measure, I guess, your focus and your response rate. Like you have to do a task and then do a different task and see if your scores improve or something like that. There are ways to measure, but it's just those are not direct measurements.
Like it could be correlations causing, like how do you isolate?
It's not like weight and body fat where it's a direct measurement of that. Like if I measured this person's body fat in a laboratory setting, that's their body fat at that time. I can only make, I think you said correlations, right? Between how fast they solve this puzzle and how much focus they have. Because there's no actual, to my knowledge, direct measurement of focus. There's only indirect measurements of focus. Yes,
exactly. Yeah. So a lot of these side benefits, there's a lot of correlation, right? Like as Lucy was hinting at, it's like the big lever is like once you start to lose fat, that automatically means you need to eat less processed stuff. Like it is very hard to maintain a healthy weight while eating a bunch of processed stuff.
I actually didn't even mention that. We say it in so many episodes that I keep forgetting to mention that, but it's absolutely true. For the people out there who say it's about food quality and not quantity, I would say if you lower the quantity, if you want to lower the quantity, you will increase the quality as well. If you're going to sustain it.
Yes.
Because it's the food quality that helps you feel full and not feel good.
Yeah, exactly.
It gives you the mental clarity. like we said.
Yeah. So then it becomes a question of like, okay, if I'm doing that, then is it the food quality that finally caused me to have brain clarity and better cholesterol?
Yes.
Or was it, that's why it's hard to tell the side benefits. But this all comes down to subjective. Right?
It is, and we're not saying the side benefits don't exist.
Yeah, we're not saying
we're not saying that at all. We're just saying that we just want to put the whole theme of, I think, everything that we put out there is we want to lay out all the information on the table for you guys, all the things that's definitive, that's in question, and that has been debunked, right?
Yeah.
And just tell you which bucket these belong into, and then you make an informed decision for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because I know there are some of you out there who, if it's not a sure thing, you just won't touch it at all. And I'm like, don't box yourself in like that.
Yeah. So to wrap that up, it basically is like there are all these side benefits. There may or may not be due to intermittent fasting, but I don't know if that completely matters. We're just laying out the information, right? If you're an ends person, like I tend to be, doesn't really matter. It causes brain clarity and it causes all these good things. So do it.
Yeah. And if you experience it, amazing. Good for you. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I was gonna say the second thing about the stuff that you had said about brain clarity, and I forgot what that was. Not weight loss benefits. I forgot. It'll come back to me. Go ahead.
Let me actually, there was something I was saying earlier that I lost my train of thought on, which was I was saying in stages. Mm-hmm. So you handle the biggest change first, which for 80+% of people is going to be weight loss first. Mm-hmm. And then once you lose weight and you want to take it up to the next level, then you might want to fine tune your strategies for the other optimization stuff like brain clarity or improved performance, etc. And so I would say that so these other side benefits, if you are somebody who wants to just push the boundaries of what you can do, and weight loss is not really your concern anymore. You're kind of already happy and happy with how you feel in your body and everything like that, and you want to just kind of take it up a notch and get into the top 10% of functioning human beings or something like that.
Like top 1%.
Yeah, probably the top 1% of top 1% in terms of like health and wellness and stuff. Then and these people are commonly called biohackers, right? And I was one myself. And basically, it becomes a pastime almost to just try different things.
Yeah.
And that's more of and they enjoy the journey. I will say this: they enjoy the journey of trying different things. So if you just enjoy that process of experimenting and seeing like how much you can push your limits, then sure, you might want to. This might be something that is of interest to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want to talk actually just a little bit about where this idea, why, where these other benefits are coming from. Why people think this, so that we just connect the dots for people. And that is mostly related to insulin. Actually, it's related to the idea of letting your body basically recover. So when it's in a fasting state, it is not working on processing your food, basically, right? So part of that involves dropping your insulin level. The insulin goes away, and there's no more sugar in the bloodstream to really have to like deal with. And so your body can focus on other things like cell repair, which is why people say that intermittent fasting may lead to longevity benefits because of the cell repair part. And also brain function, because when your body is not working on digestion, guess what? It can invest its energy into doing other things like making you focus and think more clearly. Studies have shown that when people eat a lot of food and have that huge spike and drop, that they get brain fog. And amongst many reasons, one is that your body is busy digesting other things, so there's like not enough energy to go to your brain,
right.
And things like that. So that is like the basic. I'm simplifying so much, but that is the basic reasons why people say that it's better for brain function and longevity. But everything I just said doesn't need to you don't need to use intermittent fasting for it either.
Yes.
As well, like if you say that intermittent fasting equals, stable insulin equals longevity and brain function, you can also say anything that helps stabilize insulin and makes it easy for your digestion also can help with longevity and mental focus. And there are lots of foods that you can eat. Or eating in moderation. Don't eat too much quantity that overtaxes your digestive system. Eating complex whole foods, so not empty carbs, for instance, that can spike your blood insulin levels. Also achieves the same thing. So think about things like that. Like It's not intermittent fasting equals blah. It's intermittent fasting equals A, which may lead to B, which may lead to C, and C is your final destination.
Right. And I remember what I was going to say earlier. So you were talking about how your goal depends on whether intermittent fasting works for you or not. Mm-hmm. But then, I think not works for you, but whether it's important.
I actually want to clarify something. When I've been saying works for you, I mean if you're able to stick to it. When you say works for you, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Or actually get you the kind of results that you want as well.
Right. There's a difference between between doing the intermittent fasting right and getting results versus wanting to do it but not being able to stick to it.
Got it.
So I've been using that term in terms of not being able to stick to it.
I see. Yeah, which to me, I guess I'm jumping to you wouldn't get results anyway.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So the thing that you said about the reason you're doing intermittent fasting for weight loss, how you would set up what you're allowed to do or not allowed to do in your eating windows or fasting windows differs than if you're trying to do it, for example, for brain clarity.
Yes.
So that really affects, let's talk about how do you actually set up your eating windows and fasting windows, right? We did a whole video, which was on MCT oil and coffee.
And intermittent fasting.
And intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
So, if, one of the questions that we get is, from our clients who are doing intermittent fasting for weight loss, they're like, hey, can I have 0-calorie beverages, and which are not water during the fasting window? And we're like, if it's for weight loss, go ahead, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're having diet soda at that point.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. But then if you're doing it for brain clarity, you probably don't want to have the diet soda, right?
Yeah. It depends. Yeah. Well, I guess the question is, does it break your fast?
Yeah.
I guess not. If it's 0 calories, I don't think it does. But then, there's
what is the purpose of it though, right? Like if it's for weight loss, it doesn't matter, right?
If it's for weight loss, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have calories. If it doesn't raise your insulin levels, then some say, here's where people start to argue. People actually don't agree on this. Okay, pointing that out there. People like Dave Asprey and other people say that if you eat anything that doesn't raise your insulin levels, then that's okay. So that includes MCT oil and pure fat, basically, because fat does not spike your insulin levels like the way carbs and protein do. Now, there are other people that say anything that requires metabolic activity at all to process the food, which pretty much means anything with calories. Will not count. So that includes MCT oil and that includes fats. And right now, I believe most people side with the second group, but don't quote me on this, especially I don't know when this video is going to go out. So coffee and black coffee and black tea generally have been whitelisted by pretty much everybody because they are essentially, they already said that like 0 to 2 calories. They don't spike your insulin levels. They really don't trigger that much metabolism either. So they've been whitelisted for things like some people drink bone broth, for instance, and that still has could be over 25 calories or something like that. It depends on how you make it, but there's still some processing that goes into there. So for weight loss, it doesn't really matter that much. But if you just want to make sure that you do it completely right and make sure that you're getting all the other longevity and all the other benefits, then most people say that would probably actually break your fast.
Right.
But if you're not living in a lab, it's really hard to tell.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So, so most of our clients tend to want it for weight loss, in which case I would say go for the tea and even the MCT oil, and I think that's totally fine. And then and again, if you're doing it for weight loss, then the thing that you want to do is avoid your grazing times. But then if you're not doing it for weight loss, maybe your eating window is going to be different for whatever is the productive time that you need it to be. I think those two things about fasting and eating, and I think, of course, this, I want to say goes without saying, but I'm going to say it, is you probably don't want to do dirty intermittent fasting. Like when you get to eat, you just have like 2 pizzas or something.
Oh yeah, I see.
You probably want to, still try to stick to eating a more balanced meal, which is generally like, vegetables, lean protein, and then some grains, maybe fruit, maybe a little bit of dessert if you want to go with it, but not a lot of it. And then for those of you who are doing, like, for example, 1 meal a day, I think since you only have 1 meal, you may want to have the junk, but maybe you want to have a balanced plate first, and then drink water, and then decide on the junk. So at least you feed your body first, in a nourishing way before you go for all the empty calories.
Right. Yeah, you can have junk if you want. Just I highly recommend that you also have some healthy food.
Yeah,
as well. You'll know when it catches up to you. Yeah, because you're not gonna, that brain clarity that you felt. So here's what happens. There are 2 sides to the equation for feeling good when you are eating. One is to minimize the junk as much as you can, and then the other one is to maximize the healthy nutrient stuff as much as you can, because it's the nutrition that's going to keep your body functioning. Right. And the calories are good for energy, but most people do not expend enough energy to handle all that calories. So when you intermittent fast, a lot of the time, like say you eat this much nutrients, right? A lot of the times when you intermittent fast, everything goes down. And so your junk goes down a lot. And so that's going to make you feel really, really good because you weren't eating as much junk as you used to. But if you don't keep also giving your body nutrients, at some point, it's going to feel bad again because it's going to run out of its nutrient store. So at some point, you also need to increase the nutrients if you want to keep feeling better. So that's the trend that typically happens with people. And you can circumvent that trend by eating healthy foods.
Yeah, totally. Cool. And then I think the last piece to setting up intermittent fasting in an intentional and effective way is setting up your environment, which I think you have a lot more experience with.
Well,
How
I
do you do
mean,
that?
primarily the setting up your environment is do not put food, unless you're just really good at just not eating foods when it's not your eating window time. Do not put foods in front of you, and that'll just help make it easier. Because the thing is, if you know it's not, at least from my experience, if I know it's not my eating window, I just won't think about food, right? And that's great. But if there is food in front of me, I can't not think about food. It's in my visual field.
Yeah.
So then suddenly it becomes hard for me because that food that I can't, I tell myself I can't have is literally the only thing in my head, and I can't make it go away until I get rid of the food.
Right.
I'm not a yogi yet. One day I'll be able to be surrounded by chocolate and not do anything, and be able to not do anything about it, I'm sure. But that is a far future scenario. So I would clear the food from your visual field until it's your eating window. That's not the same thing as saying you can't have any ever. I mean, you guys should know this already now, right? It takes self-responsibility. Make it easy for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you are doing a late night fast, so if you eat breakfast and your lunch and maybe an afternoon snack and you skip dinner, I highly recommend making your last meal of the day as satiating as you can. So that's when you break out the protein, the vegetables. Feel free to add some healthy fats to that. The fiber, protein, fats are usually the highest satiating foods. Break all that out, drink lots of water, and so that tides you over to morning the next day, especially if you're going to be working late.
Yeah.
And stress can definitely encourage people to eat. If you're in the morning, I think tea, coffee, black tea and coffee and plenty of water helps a lot. And from my experience, that first week kind of sucks. But then some people adapt immediately, and that's great. Other people, it depends on what your diet was like before intermittent fast. If you were a constant grazer, eating from morning until right when your head hits the pillow, it might be that first week will probably suck. If otherwise, it may go well. But the point is, sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. And so if this is something you're really serious about, I would stick it out for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess that's pretty much.
Those are good points, yeah. And just to add the thing about where Lucy says take it out of your real field, it does not mean you need to remove it from the house. Like literally, just like for example, whenever I'm Haagen-Dazs ice cream, which is one of my weaknesses, I just hide it in the back of the freezer.
Yeah.
And then I almost forget about it for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's even something as simple as it's there and you know where it is, but the fact that you never see it when I open the freezer really helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not that we're saying don't buy it.
Yeah. Cool.
How to evaluate if intermittent fasting is working for you?
Honestly, the same way I evaluate anything, if I am not making progress and I've been doing the thing correctly, on protocol for 2 weeks, then I don't know if it's working for 2 or 3 weeks, to be quite honest. 3 weeks.
Yeah. 3 weeks is minimum.
Yeah, 3 weeks is minimum.
Yeah.
To know whether or not something is working for you or not working for you.
Yeah.
Of course, the exceptions are if you So that's how you can tell if it's working or not working. Wait a minimum of 3 weeks if you're actually doing everything right. Now, if you can't stick to it at all, if you can't stick to it 80% of the time, that first week, it may not be good for you. It may not be. I mean, it doesn't matter if it works for you or doesn't work for you. If you can't follow it, you can't follow it, and it's better to find that. It basically means you're not at that. You're not at that level, I guess. Yeah. Or I don't know if that's not the right strategy for you, and it doesn't have to be just because everybody else is doing it. And I don't think usually not everybody is doing it. When people say everybody is doing something, that's usually not true. But just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean you have to do it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So if you aren't able to stick to it, I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
And tracking progress correctly, right? If the reason is weight loss, you should be, your weight and your waist measurement, right? At minimum, should be changing in the right direction. If you're doing it for brain clarity, then I guess you should feel that you should feel it. You can track it. Journal about it. Yeah. There are things you can do. If you track your time,
like,
Yeah.
you know, how much time I spend getting some stuff down. You can use
That's a good trick,
to see whether or not you're just more productive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. If you have a physical coming up and it's for medical reasons that you're doing this, you can just do 30 days of this thing and see if it made a difference versus your last. This is something I personally have done, actually. I prepare for a blood test like it's an exam sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a fun thing to do. I think. I don't know.
Just be really sure you're honest with yourself about whether you follow the protocol or you didn't.
Yeah.
If you're following the protocol, like once again, this goes back to kind of last week. A lot of people aren't aware of the difference between not making progress because they weren't on top of their targets or the protocol that they suffered themselves versus not making progress because of something not working out for them. Yeah. Be honest with yourself, because otherwise you're not going to be able to you're not going to know where to go.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that those were all of the topics. Did you have something else about this?
I don't really have something up about that. I just want to share a win real
go for it.
Quick.
Yeah.
Well, one of our clients messaged today, and I thought it was amazing, or I thought it was really good. Basically, she says she didn't really make progress on weight this week compared to last week. Her weight was the same, and she said, kind of bummed at first, but then I remembered I've been stuck between this other. I will say she weighed in at 209 pounds, and by the way, she started at like 230 or 50 or I don't know. She started a lot higher, right? And she basically said, but then I remember I've been stuck between 209 and 212 for a very long time, and this is like the first week that I've been at 209 for a sustained period of time, which means I actually probably am making progress.
Yeah.
And actually, we tallied up her average over the past week because she is actually one of the unique clients who can weigh themselves daily and not go crazy about it.
Yeah.
So she weighs herself daily. And we took the average of this week compared to the average of last week. And the average of this week was 2 pounds lower than the average of last week. So that means on average, she weighed about 211 last week. And this week, on average, she weighed about 209. I'm like, this shows that you are making progress, even though today, today versus last week, that one day, it looks like you didn't make progress. So I love that she looked at the bigger picture and not just what was my measurement today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this lends a credence to, if you're able to not attach emotion to your daily weight, taking a 7-day average, rolling average, right? I think that really helps.
Yeah, and it just makes me so happy to see kind of it's not just, the number is obviously very important, but it's not about that. It's about like the way their mindset changes over this. It's not easy to kind of be able to see the bigger picture.
Yes.
So yeah, that's why. So actually, now that we're on this point, I'm really happy to announce that a few spots have opened up in our Badass Body Boss coaching program, where we basically teach you stuff just like this. Yeah. And so if you're interested in doing a free one-on-one consultation with Richard and I to see if we're a good fit for each other, then please sign up, and we'll put a link in the description below, and please come with a serious goal, because we only want to work with people who are serious.
Yeah, because we do have limited spots, as Lucy said, because we don't, the amount of time that we spend, we cannot take a lot of people.
Yeah.
So that is why there is an application process, and we have a chat with you beforehand to see if you're a good fit, not just in terms of your goals, but also just like how we communicate and how we, personality-wise. I don't know how else to say it.
This is very true, and something that I want to communicate with more people before they sign up, which is the program. The program is great. It's tried and true. Great,
it's proven,
everything.
right?
It's proven.
For like
it's
a
great.
lot of years now.
Everything, but it's not. Nobody can like. It's not about the. It doesn't matter how good a program is if the coaching is not a good fit for you, because you can have the best program in the world, but if you don't mesh with your coach, you're not going to do the program, or you're going to get discouraged, or they're not going to point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
And so that's why we want to do this consultation first, because I don't want to waste your time and my time either. You know?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the coaching part is the part that makes a difference. Otherwise, if it was just the course, you could just read a book. right? And like the course is DQ
Nothing
valuable.
is exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's the what Lucy and I bring to the table that really makes a difference in that program. So yeah, if you're interested, as Lucy said, there's going to be a link below and take a look.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Well, good one. If you have any questions on this, hit reply and tell us, or leave a comment below, and we'll get back to you.
Yes. Thanks. Have a good rest of the weekend.
Yeah. Have a good weekend. I just realized